Hi, it's Gab, and I'm reviewing Dallas Buyers Club, which is a new semi-true, based on a true story movie starring Matthew McConaughey as a man named Ron Woodruff, who in the mid-'80s was just a hard-partying Texan, rode bulls, loved the ladies, partied a bit too hard, and contracted the HIV virus, which was a big surprise to him. And he was in a very sort of homophobic, era, as well as circle of friends and just culture in general in Texas at that time, in the United States, in the world at that time. And so he has to come to terms with, he's given 30 days to live, and the AIDS epidemic was very fresh at this time, and so in terms of treatment, there were limited options, if any, and he's quickly frustrated with what his doctors will or won't do for him, and he does his own research and his own road trips to find alternative drugs and methods of treatment, and initially this is just to save himself, but the scrapper that he is turns it into a business. The Buyers Club being a club that other victims of HIV pay for membership in, and he provides these drugs that he gets from Mexico and other illegal means, because these drugs aren't approved by the FDA at this time. So he's not selling the drugs, he's selling the membership, which is his slippery way of trying to skirt some of the legalities, which he's constantly trying to do during this story. He builds up this club. He makes acquaintances and friendships, one with a doctor, one with a cross-dresser played by Jared Leto, who becomes sort of his business partner and friend. And so, through this, of course, he overcomes his own prejudices. It gives him a reason to fight. One of his lines is he wants to die with his boots on, meaning he's not going to take the disease lying down or the bureaucracy lying down. And he becomes kind of a fighter and an advocate. And again, as I say, it's really for self-preservation and also then for business reasons. But of course, it evolves into something a bit more, he becomes a bit more of a champion for the medical rights, if not more general rights of the gay community and the HIV community. So it's a very interesting story. And I believe the movie sticks quite closely to the facts of the story. Although, as you could hear in my explanation, there are elements that we've heard before in these sort of films of, the scrappy underdog who takes on a cause. At first, it's for selfish reasons, and it becomes more of a bigger humanitarian plight, if you will. So some of those elements are a bit generic in the sort of the biographical film sphere, but it's really about Matthew McConaughey. Certainly, if you've heard anything, that's what you've heard. He does transform himself physically for this role of Ron. He's very emaciated. You can really believe that he's an ill person who's struggling to survive and who's partied hard in the past and continues to, maybe a little bit. So his transformation is quite remarkable. We haven't seen Matthew McConaughey like this before, even though his roles lately are becoming more eclectic than the typical beefcake or rom-com kind. And he's very believable in this role, and it's a good performance. I don't quite get on board with all the award speculation accolades that he's getting. I think that physical transformation alone doesn't an award win or justify. But it's a very solid performance. I believed it. I was on board with him. And sympathetic performance, but what I give him credit for is that he skirted that line. The character is a charmer, but he's also an asshole, like even up and towards the end. And McConaughey walked that line very well and didn't overdo it in the charm, which would have sort of really taken out of the story. I have to give a lot of props to Jared Leto, for his role as Ray, who, again, it's a physical transformation, but I felt it more sort of emotionally, more spiritually, and every time he was on the screen, that was sort of the heart of the story for me, a bit more than the Ron character. So my overall critique, if anything, was that I just wasn't emotionally drawn in. Again, it's an interesting story. I found the editing and maybe the screenwriting itself a little bit choppy, and it left me a bit discombobulated sometimes within the story, and so I wasn't quite drawn in emotionally as much as I expected to be, as much as I wanted to be, and so I wasn't sort of elevated in this story beyond just, that's really interesting, and it's sort of a timepiece because it encapsulates what was going on at that time via a very interesting story and a charismatic lead character. But for me, it wasn't anything more than that. So Dallas Buyers Club, I recommend it if you're interested in any of the elements I discussed, but ultimately I give it 3¼ Gabs. Thanks for watching.